Ready?
Whenever you're ready.
All right. Acknowledge the seniors, Quesy, Lamar, and Chaz. Wish they could have got a win on senior day, but we it's kind of like the same old song after a while. We in reverse. We started the game off well. We did some good things, but because of the way the season's been going, you don't expect a blowout. So they're gonna make a run. Cal's a good team. But we managed. We got through the first half, and we took some hits, but we kept going. And to start the second half, I didn't think we were as locked in. I thought we had some defensive errors. They started to spread our defense out a lot. We weren't connected the same way on switches and things of that nature. Wasn't pulled in off the ball. And so they capitalized on that. And then the biggest thing is we had 10 turnovers in the second half to only 4 assists, and I think that hurt us. And there was some live ball turnovers in that. And, that was pretty much the game from there.
Questions?
When you're talking about, the second half, it seemed like on defense, they were getting to the basket more, and was that because your defenders were taking bad angles, or what did you see there that allowed them to get to the basket easier?
Well, I just didn't think we executed the game plan. You have to be pulled in. It was a couple of times where, we had some miscues where guys just walked in for layups. But you got to be in a stance. You got to prepare. They ran the same play. Like, we seen that play 100 times. We go over it, but sometimes it happens that way. But then again, guys got to be in stance, and you got to take a little pride in what you're doing. Because that's what time of the year it is. Again, I've been in these situations before. I mean, my team, they really can't understand if I tried to break it down to them. But a game like this, like you could have really hurt Cal's season. They lost to Pitt the other night, and they lose to, if they would have had lost tonight, then they probably wouldn't be a bubble team. And this time of the year when we're mathematically we're not in it, so theoretically this is the last couple games of the season that we have. You should go out, you should play free. Hadn't had this experience in college, but in the pros, that's what we used to do. Towards the end of the year, man, you just go out there, you just play free, you have fun. And I got lucky. I beat the 72-win Bulls, and I told them guys, you go out and have fun. Now, they're not the 72-win Bulls, but at the same time, too, you can spoil their hopes if you do the right thing. And, we just didn't do that, for whatever reason. We've shot ourselves in the foot, pretty much all season, whether it was on the offensive side of the ball, the defensive side of the ball, to kind of put us in deficits in the game.
Because you talked about kind of the stretch you've been in, kind of just seems like every game, same song. What have you feel like any effort has gone down with their team? You feel like they're still fighting, or is it kind of, have you seen the ever go away any, or are they still fighting the end of the season?
Yeah, the thing that comes off is, you have to be able to look your teammate in the eye, and you have to know that he's there for you. And that has to be every game. It has to be every possession, even when it's not a great possession, but you can't waver in your trust in your teammates. And a lot of it comes down at the end of the day to trust. When you can't execute on the floor, there's many a times where as a player, I talk guys through the whole game. Sometimes you do that. But to be able to do that, you gotta know what we're doing wholeheartedly. You just can't know your position, and so at times we get a little bit of that. But collectively, they definitely haven't quit. They don't know how to fight through it. When you're trying to do something and get wins, get a win, not wins, but just get a win, you can't cheat the game. So you got to rebound with 2 hands. I think it was a 4-point game. We don't get the possession. The ball goes out of bounds on us. Like, you just can't do that. Like, you got to honor the game. If you're going for a layup and somebody comes in front of you, just got to keep it simple, make the simple play. So, it comes back to trust, and I think that's that. If I had to use a word, that's a little bit of why we're in this position.
Coach, one final game on Saturday against Clemson. Just, what do you want to see from your team? What's your final message, kind of just with it being the last game of the regular season?
I haven't even gotten to that point yet because it's really weird. I've been in coaching. I never had this happen to me in coaching. So I'm not used to where we're at. The one thing in this position, it's a humbling position to be in if you've never been in that position. Like, you don't feel like like my journey is on Google. So I've been through a lot, and man, I can tell you, nothing compared to this. What I feel right now, as the coach of Georgia Tech, nothing compares to it. I haven't experienced this before, so it makes you understand. Now this is what it really looks like. Because this is the bottom. So you gotta you have to always come, and you gotta sit and stand up tall for your team, because at the end of the day, right, if they see you waver, then they waver. And so each and every day you gotta find a way to pick yourself up to come pick them up. So the message that I have for them come Saturday, being that it's the last game of the season, I don't know yet, but I'll figure that out. Because we got a group of guys up in there that's beat down right now. And, what I want to do is I want to encourage, I want to nurture, and I got to get them to the finish line. That's the goal right now. So whatever that might be, when I get to that point, I'm pretty sure to be good, because I'm pretty good with it.
Coach Stoudamire, would you give us a big picture look of your time here with Quesy Reeves over the past 3 years, please?
Well, it's been when he walked in the door, he had the dreads and the long hair and all the different things, and then he truth be told, the first workout he ever had, he worked out 10 minutes and he threw up. And from there, he just got better every day as a player. But he's an even better person. I think that the person is better than the basketball player. And I think the person has a lot in store as he moves forward in life. He's one of those kids that, Georgia Tech alumnus, and just the institution, should be lucky to have a guy that has graduated from here, that's going to represent them in the right way. And he's been really good. He's a different kid. He 2 summers ago, he went to Spain on an exchange trip for one of his classes here at Tech. Like, nobody does that. Not a basketball player. He's written, 2 books, so he's really deep. And, the one thing that I always tell him, getting back to basketball, is that if he aspires to play at the next level, he's going to have to find a balance, so to speak, because, that's the thing about basketball, about being a professional, I should say. You don't, you either are or you aren't. There's no gray area with it. And if he can figure that out, he can move on from here and do some good things. But it's been really good having him around. He's a first-class kid, comes from a first-class family, so it's been a pleasure to coach him over the last 3 years.
Coach, anyone who's followed your career, whether it's Google or watching you, know what kind of a competitor you are as a player and as a coach. So how much does it hurt to not just be in the ACC tournament, but how much of in that competitor in you wants to make sure you're back next year to turn around, what kind of happened the second half of the season?
I mean, just like anybody would, you think about it a lot. And, I don't internalize it, but I just sit back and I reflect a lot. And, I'm honest. I'm honest, and there has to be an honesty with it. You can't, I always say this, I say this to the players, you can't go to the bathroom in the dark. You got to turn on the light, look in the mirror. And so, you have to reset it. You have to reset it, and again, you have to look at what you need to do to do those things, and get the right fits in, and all the different things that come with it. There's a lot that comes with it. Because even on the floor, everybody sees the product, but it's more to it. There's more to it than just that. And so I think about the whole. As someone that's a leader, I had somebody actually ask me about what you just basically asked, and I said, well, you have to understand, and I said it earlier, this humbles you. And it's not that I thought I was the best coach in the world, but it does not matter, because there's a toughness that comes with this. There's a competitive spirit that you have to have. And it's proven in college you don't have to have the best players to win. Sometimes you just got to play hard on a consistent basis. And you got to have a group that understands that each and every day. And there can't be any wavering in the convictions of it. So in terms of the structure of how I see it, you have to find people that fits that structure. And that's all I really think about, and that's the big picture of it, because at the end of the day, I understand what business we're in, and I'm all right with that. And so that's why I come up here, each and every day, or each and every game, I should say, when I'm asked the questions, I'm all right with answering. I don't get mad. I don't do none of those things, because that's not really going to do anything. My whole thing is to coach, to lead, to mentor, to hopefully have a positive impact on these guys when they move forward from here, understanding that the left-hand column and the right-hand column dictate sometimes what it's really all about.
Randy, if you want to wrap this up.
Their doubling of bye whenever the ball went to him, especially in the corner, and then it seemed like they were more intent upon pace offensively in the second half. Did that add to the situation?
Yeah, I thought Bye was uncharacteristic with the turnovers. First time we played them, he did a really good job. I just thought he was pressing, and that threw us off, because a lot of times we got to run and generate offense through him. It's not necessarily about him scoring all the time. It's just generating offense through him. And so when that didn't happen, you could see him get a little down on himself, and I thought he missed a layup up in there, so he really got down on himself, and he had some turnovers. So that's gonna hurt us. Again, our margin of error is small, so we can't afford to have those things happen. And I think if he doesn't play well, at times we don't have nowhere else to look. So I do think that hurt us.
Coach, thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Yep.